I'm Samantha Mitchell, 29, and last month I discovered what my sister Allison really thinks of me. After years of minimal contact, I attended her engagement party hoping to reconnect, only to hear her say, "You're not family anymore." The look on her face when my black card appeared changed everything. Funny how a piece of metal revealed what years of conversation couldn't. Before I dive into how my own sister disowned me at her engagement party, let me know where you're watching from and don't forget to subscribe to hear more stories about family drama that will make yours seem normal. Allison and I weren't always strangers. Growing up in our modest suburban home in Connecticut, we shared everything from clothes to secrets. Being only 2 years apart meant we were natural playmates. I still remember braiding her hair before school and teaching her how to ride a bike in our driveway. She followed me everywhere, her big brown eyes watching my every move with admiration. We had the typical sister fights, sure, but we were inseparable most days. Everything changed when our father left. I was 12, Allison just 10. Dad packed his things on a Tuesday afternoon while Mom was at work. No dramatic goodbye, no tearful explanation to his daughters. He simply ruffled our hair, said he'd see us soon, and walked out. We never lived with him again, and those promised visits dwindled to birthday cards with $20 bills tucked inside. Mom fell apart. Who could blame her? Suddenly a single parent to 2 girls, working as an administrative assistant with barely enough income for one person, let alone 3. I watched her cry herself to sleep for months. When the power got shut off for the first time, I realized things had changed permanently. I grew up fast after that. By 14, I was working weekends at the local grocery store, bagging items and pushing carts. My paychecks went straight to Mom, who always promised to pay me back when things get better. They never did. Meanwhile, Allison remained the baby of the family. While I worked, she joined cheerleading and spent weekends at friends' houses. Mom shielded her from our financial reality, wanting at least one of her daughters to have a normal childhood. "Samantha's just more responsible," Mom would say when relatives questioned why I worked while Allison didn't. "She takes after me." What started as protection for Allison evolved into a pattern. Mom's love was never in question, but her treatment of us couldn't have been more different. When I needed new clothes for school, they came from thrift stores. When Allison needed them, Mom somehow found the money for mall shopping. I didn't resent my sister for this, not initially. She was younger, more sensitive. I understood Mom's instinct to protect her. But as the years passed, the divide between us grew. Allison developed what I privately called her princess mentality. She expected things to be handed to her, whether it was rides to the mall, money for movies, or emotional support during her frequent dramatic crises over boys or friends. By senior year of high school, I'd saved enough from my now 3 part-time jobs to consider college. My guidance counselor pushed me toward scholarship applications, seeing potential I barely recognized in myself. When the acceptance letter from State University came with a full academic scholarship, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was my ticket out. "You're abandoning us," Allison accused when I announced my college plans at dinner. She was 15 then, all dramatic emotions and black eyeliner. "I'm bettering myself so I can help us all later," I replied, but the hurt in her eyes was real. Mom said nothing, just pushed food around her plate. College created physical distance, but the emotional gulf had started years before. I called home weekly at first, then monthly. My first Christmas break, I found our house largely unchanged, except Allison had claimed my bedroom for her study space. My things were boxed in the garage. The message was clear: moving forward meant there was no moving back. I doubled down on my studies, graduating with honors in finance. My first job at an investment firm paid modestly, but it was more money than I'd ever seen. I sent checks home monthly, most cashed immediately, with no acknowledgement beyond Mom's brief thanks texts. Allison graduated high school with no scholarship prospects but plenty of social media followers. She chose a local community college and lived at home. Our phone calls became increasingly one-sided, her complaints about classes, boyfriends, and Mom, with little interest in my life. The only consistent questions were variations of "Can you help with?" followed by dollar amounts. After my fifth emergency transfer to cover Allison's car payment, I suggested she create a budget. The call ended with her accusing me of acting superior and forgetting where I came from. I was 24, living in a studio apartment with second-hand furniture, hardly the picture of success she painted me to be. The financial technology company that ultimately changed my trajectory recruited me from a job fair. Starting in their analysis department, I worked 60-hour weeks and earned my MBA part-time. While my peers posted vacation photos, I built spreadsheets and prediction models. By 27, I headed my own department. By 28, I joined the executive team. Success came with perks I'd never imagined: company car, expense account, and eventually, that black card. When the senior VP handed me the heavy metal rectangle after my promotion to executive director, I almost handed it back. "This is for executives who need to entertain clients and represent the company," he explained. "That's you now, Mitchell." During those 5 years of career building, communication with Allison dwindled to holiday texts and occasional social media likes. Mom kept me minimally updated. Allison's jobs came and went, as did her boyfriend's. I gathered she worked at a high-end boutique downtown and had developed expensive taste that her income couldn't support. The requests for money became less frequent but larger in amount. The last time we spoke before the engagement party was nearly 8 months earlier. Allison called at midnight, desperate for rent money after splurging on a weekend trip to Miami. I transferred the funds but suggested we talk about financial planning when she was sober. "Not everyone wants to be a boring corporate drone like you," she snapped. "Some of us actually want to enjoy life." Those words stung more than I cared to admit. Was that how she saw me? A drone? Is that what my sacrifices and hard work amounted to in her eyes? I didn't call again after that night. Neither did she. Until the engagement party invitation arrived in my mailbox, heavy cardstock with gold foil lettering announcing Allison Mitchell and James Peterson's celebration. No personal note, no phone call, just a formal invitation as if I were a distant acquaintance. I stared at it for days before finally RSVPing yes. The invitation sat on my kitchen counter for a week. Each morning, I'd stare at it while making coffee, debating whether to attend. Allison hadn't called to mention it, not even a text asking if I'd received it. The formal cardstock with its flowing calligraphy felt like a message from a stranger, not my sister. "Miss Samantha Mitchell," it read, addressing me as if we'd never shared a bathroom or fought over the last cookie. The engagement party would be held at the Grand Hamilton Hotel, a venue I knew cost more per hour than our childhood home's monthly mortgage. After days of deliberation, I called Mom. We spoke infrequently these days. Brief calls that danced around the growing distance between us. She seemed surprised to hear from me. "Of course you should come, Samantha," she said when I mentioned the invitation. "Allison would be heartbroken if you didn't." Her voice carried that familiar tone, slightly exaggerated concern that felt more performative than genuine. "Has she mentioned wanting me there?" I asked. "We haven't spoken in months." "She's been so busy with wedding plans," Mom replied, neatly sidestepping my question. "James comes from a very good family. His father owns that development company, you know, the one that built those luxury condos downtown." I didn't know, but I nodded into the phone anyway. "How did they meet?" "At the boutique. He came in shopping for his mother's birthday." Mom's voice lifted with excitement. "Can you imagine? Just like a movie. He could have any girl, and he chose our Allison. Our Allison. As if we shared equal claim to her. As if I hadn't become an outsider years ago." "I'll be there," I promised, already regretting the words as they left my mouth. That evening, I researched James Peterson. LinkedIn revealed he was a vice president at his father's company with an MBA from an Ivy League school. His Instagram showed a handsome man with a practiced smile, always impeccably dressed, often photographed on boats or at charity galas. Recent photos included Allison, looking transformed from the girl I remembered, designer clothes, professional makeup, hair colored to a platinum blonde that must have cost a fortune to maintain. They looked happy, I supposed, in that carefully curated social media way. I wondered if Allison had told him about her struggling single mother or her estranged sister who paid for her car insurance. I doubted it. The following weekend, I went shopping for an engagement gift and an appropriate outfit. The department store attendant suggested a crystal vase from the registry. It's one of their more modest requests, she noted, showing me the $400 price tag. I agreed without flinching, remembering a time when that amount would have covered our family's groceries for a month. For myself, I selected a navy blue dress, conservative but elegant, expensive without being showy. Professional. Safe. I wasn't sure what role I was meant to play at this event: proud sister? Long-lost family member? Background character in Allison's perfect life narrative? Better to blend in than stand out. As the date approached, I found myself imagining reconciliation scenarios. Maybe seeing me would remind Allison of our shared history. Maybe away from Mom's influence, we could rebuild some semblance of sisterhood. I rehearsed conversations in my head while running on the treadmill, crafting the perfect balance of warmth without desperation. The night before the party, I drove back to my hometown, passing familiar landmarks that now felt like artifacts from someone else's life. Our old elementary school. The park where Dad taught us to fly kites. The ice cream shop where Mom would take us after dentist appointments, our little secret, she'd whisper, as if breaking a rule made the treat sweeter. I checked into the Grand Hamilton Hotel rather than staying with Mom. My corporate discount made the luxury accommodations surprisingly affordable, and I needed neutral territory to prepare myself mentally. My room overlooked the city where I'd grown up but never quite belonged, its lights blinking like distant memories. That night, I texted Allison, looking forward to celebrating with you tomorrow. So happy for you. Simple, genuine, open. 3 hours later, her reply came, thanks for coming. See you then. No emotion, no exclamation points, no emojis, so unlike the expressive sister I remembered who dotted her notes with hearts and stars. I laid out my dress, set 2 alarms, and fell into restless sleep, dreaming of a parallel universe where Dad never left, where Mom treated us equally, where Allison and I grew into adulthood as friends instead of strangers connected by fading memories and shared DNA. Morning arrived with gray skies threatening rain, appropriate for my mood. I spent extra time on my appearance, applying makeup carefully and styling my hair into a sleek updo. The woman in the mirror looked confident, successful, unflappable. If only she felt that way inside. It's just a party, I told my reflection. 4 hours, maximum. You can do anything for 4 hours. The question that haunted me as I rode the elevator down to the ballroom wasn't whether I could endure the party, but whether there was anything left of my family worth saving. The Grand Hamilton's ballroom exceeded even my elevated expectations. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over at least 20 round tables draped in champagne-colored linens. Fresh flower arrangements, roses and lilies in white and pale pink, towered as centerpieces. A string quartet played quietly in one corner, and uniformed servers circulated with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres. This wasn't just an engagement party, it was a statement of wealth and social standing. I estimated the cost at well over $50,000, more than my annual salary during my first job out of college. I accepted a glass of champagne from a passing server and scanned the room for familiar faces. Most guests were strangers, dressed in designer clothing that subtly announced their socioeconomic status. I recognized a few distant relatives, an aunt who had stopped sending birthday cards when I turned 18, a cousin who once asked me for job connections then never followed up. Mom spotted me first, weaving through the crowd in a lavender dress I'd never seen before. Her hair was professionally styled, her makeup heavier than her usual light application. "Samantha, you made it," she said, air-kissing near my cheek to avoid smudging her lipstick. "Doesn't everything look beautiful?" The Petersons spared no expense. "It's lovely," I agreed. "Where's Allison?" "Making the rounds with James and his parents." Mom glanced over her shoulder nervously. They're very particular about protocol. Old money, you know. I didn't know, actually. Our family history included no protocol beyond wash your hands before dinner and no money, old or otherwise. I'm so glad you're here, Mom continued, though her attention had already drifted to other arriving guests. Allison will be thrilled. Before I could respond, she squeezed my arm and disappeared into the crowd with a practiced social smile. Left alone, I drifted toward the gift table to deposit my package. The table already overflowed with perfectly wrapped presents, many significantly larger than mine. I placed my modest box toward the back, suddenly self-conscious about my modest $400 vase. You must be Samantha, a deep voice said behind me. I turned to find a tall man in his early 30s, conventionally handsome in a tailored gray suit. James Peterson extended his hand with the confidence of someone never questioned. Yes, I confirmed, shaking his hand. And you're the lucky man. Congratulations, James. Thank you for coming. Allison mentioned you're rarely in town. His tone remained pleasant, but the subtle emphasis on rarely didn't escape me. My work keeps me busy, I explained, choosing diplomacy over defense. In finance technology, right? Impressive field for a woman. He delivered this with a smile that suggested he believed he'd paid me a compliment. For anyone, I corrected gently. But yes, I enjoy it. His eyes flickered with something. Annoyance? Amusement, before he nodded. Allison is over by the windows with my parents. I'm sure she'd love to say hello. With that, he excused himself to greet other guests. I took a steadying breath before making my way across the room. Through gaps in the crowd, I caught glimpses of my sister. Allison had always been pretty in that effortless way that attracted attention without seeking it. Now, she looked like a polished version of herself, thinner, blonder, her movements more calculated. She laughed at something an older woman said, touching her arm with practiced charm. As I approached, I overheard snippets of conversation between an elderly couple nearby. That's the sister who moved away, the woman whispered not quietly enough. Hardly visits. Too important for family now, I guess. Shoo, Martha, her companion warned. She'll hear you. I pretended I hadn't and continued forward, plastering on a smile as Allison finally noticed me. For a fleeting moment, something like her old warmth flashed across her face, so quickly I might have imagined it, before her expression settled into polite acknowledgement. Samantha, you made it, she said, echoing Mom's greeting. No hug, no genuine excitement, just the same reception she'd give a distant acquaintance. Wouldn't miss it, I replied, suddenly aware of the scrutiny from the elegant older couple beside her, clearly James's parents. Congratulations, Allison. I'm so happy for you. Thank you. She turned slightly. These are James's parents, Margaret and William Peterson. This is my sister, Samantha. Margaret Peterson assessed me with the clinical precision of someone accustomed to making quick social judgments. How lovely you could join us. Allison mentioned you live quite far away. I lived exactly 2 hours away by car. Not so far that I'd miss my only sister's engagement. Samantha works in the city, Allison added quickly. Very demanding schedule. What do you do, dear? William Peterson asked, his tone suggesting mild curiosity at best. Before I could answer, Allison jumped in. She works with computers. Tech stuff. I'm an executive director at Finmark Financial Technologies, I clarified, trying not to sound defensive. We develop security systems for international banking transactions. William's eyebrows raised slightly, the first genuine reaction I'd received. Finmark? Impressive operation. They've revolutionized cross-border payment verification. Allison's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Sam's always been the brainiac of the family. Not just brains, I said lightly. You were always the artistic one. Yes, well, Allison glanced around, clearly looking for an escape. I should greet the Hendersons. they just arrived. Excuse me. She touched James's father's arm. William, could you point them out to me? The older man nodded, offering his arm to escort her. Margaret followed after a brief nod in my direction. Just like that, I was dismissed. I retreated to the bar, ordering a sparkling water instead of more champagne. I needed clarity, not cloudiness. Across the room, I spotted my cousin Taylor, the only relative I'd kept in sporadic contact with over the years. She waved, looking relieved to see a familiar face. "This is quite the production," she said, sidling up to me. "I feel underdressed, and I'm wearing my best cocktail dress." "You look great," I assured her. "How have you been?" We chatted about her nursing job and recent move while I kept one eye on Allison, who floated through the room like a politician working a fundraiser. She hadn't once looked in my direction since our brief interaction. "Is it just me?" Taylor asked, following my gaze, "or has Allison transformed into a completely different person?" "It's not just you," I confirmed. "I barely recognize her. The Allison I remember used to snort when she laughed too hard and collected those awful troll dolls." Taylor sipped her drink. "This version seems calculated." As if to underscore Taylor's observation, I overheard Allison's voice from nearby, speaking to an older woman in pearls. "We've always been a very close-knit family," she was saying. "Traditional values, you know? James appreciates that about us." I nearly choked on my water. Close-knit? Traditional? Our broken, scattered family was many things, but those descriptions existed only in Allison's reimagined history. "I need some air," I told Taylor, squeezing her hand before walking toward the terrace doors. Outside, the evening air had cooled with approaching rain. I leaned against the stone balustrade, questioning my decision to attend. What had I hoped for? Some miraculous reunion? Recognition of our shared past? Allison clearly wanted to present a carefully curated version of herself to her future in-laws and their social circle, a version that apparently required minimizing my existence. They're quite concerned about appearances, aren't they? I turned to find Margaret Peterson standing nearby, lighting a cigarette with elegant precision. "The Petersons have maintained a certain standing in this community for generations," she continued, exhaling smoke away from me. "James is their only son. Their expectations are substantial." I wasn't sure how to respond, so I simply nodded. "Your sister seems very eager to meet those expectations," she observed. "Almost too eager, perhaps." Before I could decipher this cryptic assessment, the terrace doors opened, and Allison emerged, looking slightly frantic until she spotted us. "There you are, Margaret. James is looking for you. The photographer wants family photos." Her eyes darted to me, then away. Inside, by the grand staircase. Margaret extinguished her cigarette in a nearby planter. "Of course, dear. We wouldn't want to keep the photographer waiting." She walked past Allison, pausing briefly. "I was just getting acquainted with your sister. Fascinating career she has." Once alone with Allison, I attempted conversation. "Beautiful party. You must be excited." "Listen," she said, voice low and intense. "I need to speak with you privately. Meet me in the bridal suite in 20 minutes. Room 302. Without waiting for my response, she turned and followed Margaret inside, leaving me confused and increasingly uneasy about what this conversation might entail. I waited exactly 20 minutes before making my way to the third floor. The hotel corridor stretched in hushed elegance, thick carpeting muffling my footsteps as I approached room 302. I hesitated before knocking, suddenly unsure what to expect. Was this the moment of reconnection I'd hoped for, or something else entirely? Allison opened the door immediately, as if she'd been watching for me. The bridal suite was opulent, all cream and gold with champagne chilling in a silver bucket and flower arrangements echoing those in the ballroom below. "Come in," she said, checking the hallway before closing the door behind me. She'd removed her heels, standing barefoot on the plush carpet. This small detail, my sister's bare feet, felt unexpectedly intimate, a glimpse of the girl I remembered beneath the polished exterior. "Everything okay?" I asked. "The party seems wonderful." "It is." She paced toward the window, then back. "Everything's perfect, actually. James's parents are impressed with the planning, the guest list is exactly right, and the Cunninghams, who never attend anything since their divorce, both showed up. It's going exactly as I hoped." I waited, sensing there was more. Allison had never summoned me for a status report on party attendance. "You look good, Sam," she said finally, using my childhood nickname for the first time in years. "Successful. Put together." "Thank you. So do you. I'm really happy for you and James. He seems nice." Allison laughed, a short, sharp sound nothing like her former unrestrained giggles. "Nice. Yes, he's nice. He's also heir to the Peterson development fortune and connected to every important family in the state." Her bluntness surprised me. "I meant he seems to care about you." "He does," she agreed quickly. "And I love him. But let's not pretend his background isn't relevant. It's changed everything for me. For Mom too." I nodded slowly, beginning to understand. "The Petersons are helping Mom financially?" "They bought her a condo in their newest development. She moves in after the wedding." Allison adjusted an already perfect curl. "No more worrying about rent increases or faulty plumbing." "That's generous," I said carefully. "I'm glad she'll be comfortable." "It's what family does," Allison replied pointedly. "Takes care of each other. Stays connected." And there it was, the real conversation beginning. I took a breath, deciding to address it directly. "Allison, if you're upset that I moved away." "Upset?" She turned to face me fully. "Why would I be upset that my sister abandoned us when things got tough? That you visit maybe once a year? That you send checks instead of showing up? That's not fair," I countered, keeping my voice level. "I didn't abandon anyone. I went to college, built a career, and sent money home consistently, money that supported both you and Mom. Money isn't the same as being present." Her voice rose slightly. "Do you know who helped Mom when she had pneumonia last winter? Me. Do you know who listens to her complain about her arthritis every Sunday over dinner? Me. While you're off in your fancy condo with your important job, I'm the one actually being a daughter." I stared at her, processing this new information. "Mom had pneumonia?" "She never told me." "Of course she didn't. She didn't want to burden you." Allison made air quotes around the word. "She thinks you're too important now for family problems." Guilt and anger warred within me. "That's not fair to either of us, Allison. I'm not a mind reader. If no one tells me what's happening, you could ask. You could call more than once a month. You could visit without us begging." Her composure cracked, revealing the hurt beneath. "You left us, Sam. You got out and never looked back." "I had to leave to make something of myself," I said quietly. "There were no opportunities for me here." "There were no opportunities because you didn't come from the right family or know the right people," she countered. "So I found another way. James loves me, and his family is willing to accept me, accept us, if we fit their expectations." Understanding dawned. "And I don't fit those expectations." Allison's expression confirmed my suspicion before she spoke. "William and Margaret are very traditional. Family reputation matters to them. They were already concerned about Mom being divorced, but I explained about Dad leaving us, and they were sympathetic. But an estranged sister who hasn't been part of the family for years? Who sends money like we're a charity case? It raises questions I can't answer." "Questions about what? My character? Or yours for accepting my help?" Her silence was answer enough. "So what exactly are you saying, Allison?" I asked, though I already knew. She lifted her chin, her expression hardening. I'm saying that tonight needs to go perfectly. The Petersons are watching everything, judging whether I'll fit into their world. Having a sister who's practically a stranger complicates things. And what would you like me to do about that? Pretend we're close? Create some fictional relationship to make you look better? I'd like you to understand what's at stake for me. Allison's voice cracked. This is my chance for security, for the life we always wanted but couldn't have. Why can't you just be happy for me instead of making everything so complicated? I am happy for you, I insisted. But I won't pretend to be someone I'm not to help you impress your future in-laws. Allison stared at me, something shifting in her expression. When she spoke again, her voice was eerily calm. You're not family anymore. You haven't been for years. The words hit like a physical blow. Despite our distance, despite the complications between us, I'd never stopped considering Allison my sister, my family, my blood. You don't mean that, I said quietly. I do. Her gaze remained steady. Family shows up. Family stays connected. Family puts each other first. You chose your career and your independence over us years ago. You became a stranger who occasionally sends money. That's not true. I've supported you both. We don't need your support anymore, she interrupted. James and his family will take care of us now. Real care, not just financial transactions. I felt tears threatening but refused to let them fall. So what do you want from me, Allison? Why am I here? She glanced at her watch. I need to get back downstairs soon. The toast is in 20 minutes. She straightened her shoulders. I think it would be best if you left. Make an excuse, a work emergency or something. It would be simpler for everyone. Stunned doesn't begin to describe what I felt. You're asking me to leave your engagement party? To sneak out the back door like I've done something wrong? I'm asking you to do one thing for me, for once in your life. One thing that puts my needs first. Her tone was cool, detached. Is that really so much to ask? Before I could respond, a knock at the door interrupted us. James entered without waiting for a response, his expression shifting from cheerful to concerned as he registered the tension. Everything okay in here? My mother said you both disappeared. His gaze darted between us. Fine, Allison said, her social mask sliding back into place with frightening ease. Just sister stuff. You know. James didn't look convinced. My parents were asking about the family photos. They wanted to include Samantha. Allison's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Actually, Sam was just telling me she might need to leave early. Work emergency. I stared at my sister, barely recognizing the person before me. That's not what I said. James frowned slightly. Is something wrong? Samantha's presence is just complicated, Allison said with a sigh, as if explaining something tiresome. She hasn't been part of our lives for years, and suddenly including her in family photos feels dishonest. I see. James's tone revealed nothing of his thoughts. Well, my parents specifically asked. They were quite impressed after speaking with Samantha earlier. Of course they were, Allison muttered, mask slipping momentarily before she recovered. Fine. We should get back to the party anyway. As she brushed past me toward the door, I caught her arm gently. Allison, please. Let's not leave things like this. For a moment, something like regret flickered in her eyes. Then she glanced at James, and her expression hardened again. Some things can't be fixed with money, Sam. Not even yours. She pulled away and headed for the door, leaving James and me in awkward silence. I should. He gestured vaguely after her. Go, I nodded. She needs you. Once alone, I took several deep breaths, trying to process what had just happened. My own sister had disowned me, had asked me to leave her celebration because my presence complicated her carefully constructed narrative. The pain was sharp and immediate, like a physical wound. I checked my reflection in the ornate mirror, surprised to find no visible evidence of the emotional devastation I felt. Outside, I heard the first rumble of thunder as the threatened storm finally arrived. Appropriate, I thought grimly. I had two choices: slink away as Allison wanted, or hold my head high and return to the party on my own terms. The girl I'd been at 12 might have chosen the former, eager to please, to smooth things over. But I wasn't that girl anymore. With one final steadying breath, I slipped my shoes back on and headed for the door. If this was to be my last appearance as Allison's sister, I would make it count. Downstairs, the party continued in full swing, seemingly unaffected by the storm now raging outside or the emotional storm I'd just weathered. The string quartet had been replaced by a small band playing soft jazz standards. Guests clustered around high cocktail tables, champagne glasses in hand, faces flushed with alcohol and celebration. I made my way to the gift table, a new plan forming. Despite Allison's cruelty, I wouldn't leave without giving her the engagement present I'd selected. Not out of spite or to prove a point, but because finishing what I'd started felt important, a final gesture of the sisterhood she'd rejected. The beautifully wrapped package sat where I'd left it, partially hidden behind larger gifts. I retrieved it, holding it carefully as I surveyed the room for the best place to leave it where Allison would be sure to find it. Perhaps with the event coordinator, or leaving so soon? I turned to find William Peterson studying me with unexpected interest. Up close, I could see where James got his strong jawline and penetrating gaze. I was just looking for a good place to leave my gift, I explained, not confirming or denying my departure plans. Ah. He nodded thoughtfully. I heard there was some tension between you and your sister. My cheeks warmed. How much had James told him? Family relationships can be complicated. Indeed they can. He gestured toward the exit. I was stepping out for some air myself. Would you care to join me? The covered walkway should protect us from the rain. Curiosity won over caution, and I followed him through a side door to a columned portico that ran alongside the hotel. The storm had intensified, rain pounding against the stone driveway, thunder rumbling overhead. We stood in silence for a moment, watching nature's display. I understand you work in financial technology, he said finally. Finmark, was it? Yes, for about 6 years now. Impressive organization. One of our development projects includes their regional headquarters. He turned slightly toward me. What's your role there? I'm an executive director overseeing security protocol development and implementation. I responded automatically, the kind of answer I'd given at countless business functions. Started at the bottom, did you? Analysis department, I confirmed. Worked my way up. William nodded approvingly. The best executives usually do. Building something from nothing teaches lessons you can't learn any other way. For the first time that evening, I felt someone was seeing me, the actual me, not some predetermined idea of who I was or wasn't. It was both refreshing and disconcerting. Your sister mentioned you'd been supportive of her and your mother over the years, he continued, surprising me. She said that? I couldn't hide my disbelief. Not in those words, perhaps, he admitted. But it was clear from context. She has a certain anxiety about measuring up. Understandable, given the circumstances. I remained silent, unsure how to respond. William Peterson was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. You'll be staying at the hotel tonight? He asked, changing subjects. Yes, I thought it would be simpler than driving back so late. Wise decision, especially with this weather. He gestured toward the lobby. I believe I saw your mother looking for you earlier. Shall we head back? As we walked toward the main entrance, I noticed the hotel staff preparing for guest departures, retrieving coats, arranging for valets. A line had formed at the reception desk where a harried-looking clerk was processing transactions. Looks like the storm is driving some early departures, William observed. I should settle my bill too, since I'll be leaving in the morning, I replied, more to myself than to him. Allow me to walk you to the desk. I believe the manager is a friend of mine. His offer seemed genuine, a small kindness after an emotionally draining evening. We joined the short queue, William making small talk about the hotel's recent renovation. When we reached the front, the clerk greeted him by name. "Mr. Peterson, good evening. How may I help you?" "My friend here would like to settle her account," he explained, stepping aside. "Of course. Name on the reservation?" "Samantha Mitchell," I supplied, reaching for my wallet. The clerk typed briefly. "Yes, Ms. Mitchell. One night in our executive suite. Would you like to settle now or in the morning?" "Now would be preferable," I said, extracting my corporate card from my wallet. "I may leave early." "Certainly." He processed the transaction efficiently, sliding the receipt and a pen toward me. "Your signature, please." As I signed, William commented, "Executive suite? You travel in style, Ms. Mitchell." "Company policy for directors and above," I explained, returning the pen. "Though I rarely take advantage of it." "Impressive corporate culture," he remarked. "Most businesses have cut back on such perks." I was about to respond when the clerk interrupted, his eyes widening slightly as he processed my payment. "Thank you, Ms. Mitchell. I've just noticed, this is our first Centurion card transaction this week. Per our policy, that entitles you to a complimentary airport transfer service tomorrow, if you're interested." I glanced down at the heavy black metal card on the counter between us. "That's very kind, but I drove here." "Of course. In that case, perhaps our valet service or—" William interrupted, his attention suddenly focused on my card. "Is that the Finmark Corporate Centurion? I wasn't aware they issued those." "It's recent," I explained, slipping the card back into my wallet. "For client entertainment and travel expenses. Those aren't issued to just anyone," he noted, his tone shifting subtly. "Even at the executive level." I shrugged lightly. "They're particular about their security team having adequate resources when traveling internationally." The clerk handed me my receipt with a newly respectful nod. As we stepped away from the desk, I noticed William studying me with increased interest. "You know," he said thoughtfully, "James mentioned you work in technology, but he didn't specify your level of responsibility. Executive director at your age is remarkably impressive." "I've been fortunate," I replied, uncomfortable with his scrutiny. "Right place, right time, right skill set. Fortune favors the prepared," he countered. "And from what little I know of Finmark's executive structure, they don't hand out director positions, or Centurion cards, based on luck." Before I could respond, a commotion near the ballroom entrance caught our attention. Allison had emerged, scanning the lobby with evident frustration. When she spotted us, her expression flickered through surprise, confusion, and something like alarm. "There you are," she called, her voice overly bright as she approached. "Dad was looking for you." She directed this to William before turning to me with a carefully constructed smile. "I thought you'd left." "Not yet," I replied evenly. "Just settling my hotel bill." "William, they're about to do the family toast," she urged, placing a hand on his arm. "James is waiting." "Of course," he nodded. "Samantha and I were just having a fascinating conversation about her work at Finmark. Did you know she's an executive director in charge of international security protocols?" Allison's smile faltered slightly. "Sam's always been career-focused." "Indeed. And quite successful at it, evidently." William's tone remained pleasant, but I detected something like reproof beneath it. "Her company issues her one of these." He gestured toward my purse where I'd returned my wallet. "A corporate Centurion card. Do you know how rare those are?" Allison stared at my purse, then at me, her expression unreadable. "I should get back to the party," she said finally. "We both should," William agreed. "Samantha, will you join us? I'd like to introduce you to some colleagues who would be fascinated by your work." Before I could answer, James appeared beside us, looking concerned. "Everything all right?" "The toast is waiting." "Just becoming better acquainted with your fiancé's sister," William explained. Did you know she's an executive director at Finmark? James hesitated, glancing between us. I believe Allison mentioned something about technology. She's being modest, then. Samantha here is responsible for security protocols that protect billions in daily transactions. And apparently trusted enough to carry this. He nodded toward my purse again. James looked confused until his father clarified, a corporate Centurion card. The kind our company has been trying to qualify for. Understanding dawned on James's face, followed by something like respect as he looked at me anew. That's impressive. It's just a corporate expense tool, I said, increasingly uncomfortable with the attention. Nothing special. On the contrary, William disagreed. It speaks volumes about your position and the trust placed in you. He turned to Allison, whose expression had grown increasingly strained. Your sister is quite remarkable, my dear. You must be very proud. Allison's eyes darted between her future father-in-law and me, calculation evident in her gaze. When she spoke, her voice had transformed completely from the cold dismissal in the bridal suite. Of course I am, she gushed, stepping closer to loop her arm through mine as if we were the closest of sisters. Sam's success has been amazing to watch. We've always been so close, supporting each other through everything. The audacity of her performance left me momentarily speechless. This woman who had declared I wasn't family anymore less than an hour ago now clung to me like a beloved sister. Is that so? William's tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. Absolutely, Allison continued, warming to her fiction. In fact, I was just telling Sam she has to be in our family photos tonight. Wouldn't feel right without her. James checked his watch. Speaking of which, we really should get back. Mother's getting anxious about the toast. Of course, William nodded. Samantha, will you join us? I'd like Margaret to hear more about your work. 4 pairs of eyes turned to me expectantly, William genuinely interested, James politely curious, and Allison silently pleading. In that moment, I understood the power had shifted. My sister, who had dismissed me so coldly, now needed me to play along with her charade of family closeness. I could have agreed, could have slipped into the role she suddenly wanted me to play. I could have pretended the conversation in the bridal suite never happened. It would have been easier, smoother, more dignified perhaps than acknowledging the ugly truth. But I had spent too many years accommodating others at my own expense. I appreciate the invitation, I said carefully, but I think it's best if I don't. This is Allison and James's celebration, and I wouldn't want to complicate things. Allison's grip on my arm tightened painfully. Don't be silly, she laughed, the sound brittle. It's no complication at all. Isn't it? I asked quietly, meeting her gaze directly. You made your feelings quite clear upstairs. An uncomfortable silence fell. William and James exchanged glances. Perhaps we should give you two a moment, William suggested tactfully, steering his son a few steps away. Once they were out of earshot, Allison dropped all pretense. What are you doing? She hissed. They're impressed with you. This is perfect. Perfect for what, Allison? For maintaining your fiction about our close family bond? Can you just play along? For once in your life, can you think about someone besides yourself? The irony of her accusation was staggering. I've thought about you and Mom for years. I've supported you both financially. I came tonight hoping to reconnect with my sister, only to be told I'm not family anymore. I was upset, she backpedaled. I didn't mean it. Yes, you did. And you know what? That's your choice to make. I stepped back, creating physical distance to match the emotional gulf between us. But you don't get to discard me when I'm inconvenient and reclaim me when I might be useful. Allison's expression hardened. So that's it? You're going to embarrass me in front of James's family out of spite? This isn't spite, Allison. This is self-respect. I retrieved my gift from where I'd set it on a nearby table. I brought this for you and James. I hope you'll be very happy together. She accepted the package automatically, her face a complex mix of anger, panic, and something that might have been regret. Congratulations on your engagement, I said with genuine sincerity. I wish you all the happiness in the world. With that, I turned and walked toward William and James, who stood talking quietly nearby. Thank you for the conversation, Mr. Peterson. It was a pleasure meeting you. I extended my hand, which he shook firmly. Likewise, Ms. Mitchell. I hope we'll have the opportunity to continue our discussion sometime. Perhaps, I agreed non-committally before turning to James. Congratulations again. Allison is lucky to have found someone who values family so highly. His expression suggested he understood more than he let on. Thank you for coming. And for the gift. I nodded once more to them both, then walked with measured steps toward the exit, past curious onlookers and my wide-eyed mother who had appeared too late to witness the exchange. Outside, the storm had passed, leaving the night air washed clean and cool. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter somehow, as if I'd set down a burden I hadn't fully acknowledged carrying. The black card that had inadvertently revealed so much remained tucked in my wallet, just a piece of metal, but tonight, a catalyst for truth. The drive back to the hotel should have taken 3 minutes. I stretched it to 15, circling downtown streets slick with rain, streetlights reflecting in puddles like fallen stars. My mind replayed the evening's events in continuous loop, Allison's rejection, William's interest, the bizarre moment when a corporate expense card shifted the power dynamic between us. Finally, exhaustion drove me back to the Grand Hamilton. In my room, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the king-sized bed, still fully dressed. My phone buzzed almost immediately. Allison. I silenced it without answering, then watched as text notifications began to appear. Sam, please call me. You're making this a bigger deal than it needs to be. Can we just talk about this? After the 5th message, I turned the phone face down on the nightstand. Whatever crisis Allison was experiencing now wasn't my emergency. For the first time in our relationship, I chose my own well-being over her demands. Sleep eluded me despite my exhaustion. Around 2 a.m., I gave up trying, ordered chamomile tea from room service, and sat by the window watching the occasional car pass below. My thoughts drifted from Allison to Mom, wondering if she'd been complicit in the fiction my sister had created or merely a bystander. I couldn't remember the last truly honest conversation I'd had with either of them. Morning arrived with gray light filtering through partially drawn curtains. My phone showed 17 missed calls and 23 text messages, most from Allison, 3 from Mom, and surprisingly, 1 from James. I ignored them all, ordered breakfast to my room, and made an impulsive decision: I would extend my stay through the weekend. Not to resolve family drama, but to reclaim some piece of my hometown for myself. I was finishing my coffee when the hotel phone rang. The front desk informed me that a Mr. Peterson was asking to see me. Assuming it was William, I was surprised when James himself appeared at my door minutes later, looking uncomfortable in casual weekend clothes. Samantha, he greeted me formally. I hope I'm not disturbing you. I wasn't expecting visitors, I replied, leaving unspoken the question of why he was there. May I come in? Just for a moment. Curiosity won over caution, and I stepped aside to let him enter. He declined my offer of coffee, remaining standing near the door as if planning a quick escape. Allison sent you, I guessed, when he didn't immediately speak. Yes and no. He ran a hand through his hair, a surprisingly human gesture from someone who had seemed so polished the night before. She's upset about how things ended last night. I'm sure she is. She asked me to convince you to call her, he admitted. But that's not why I came. This surprised me. Then why are you here? James hesitated, choosing his words carefully. My father was impressed by you last night. He rarely is. This morning, he suggested I invite you to join our family's charity foundation board. I stared at him. You can't be serious. I am, actually. Though I suspect his interest isn't entirely philanthropic. Meaning? Meaning Finnmark would be a valuable connection for Peterson Development's new tech center project. His honesty was unexpected. And meaning he thinks my fiancé's accomplished sister would be an asset to the family image. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same sister Allison wanted to hide away just hours earlier. James had the grace to look uncomfortable. I didn't know what transpired between you until after you left. Allison was upset. I imagined she was, I said dryly. She explained that things had been difficult between you since your father left. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other. That you'd grown apart over the years. Is that what she said? Among other things. He met my gaze directly. She didn't mention that you've been supporting them financially. I maintained a neutral expression. That's between me and my family. Perhaps. But it changes the narrative significantly. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, I think she regrets what she said to you. What she regrets is that it backfired, I corrected him. She wanted me gone until I became potentially useful to her narrative. James didn't argue. My father's offer is genuine, regardless. He admires self-made success stories. He reached into his pocket and produced a business card. If you're interested in discussing the foundation position, he'd like to hear from you. I accepted the card without commitment. I'll think about it. That's all he's asking. James opened the door, then turned back. And Samantha? Whatever you decide about Allison, I hope you know you'll always be welcome in our home. Family is complicated, but it's still family. After he left, I sat with his words, turning them over like stones in a river. Family is complicated, but it's still family. Was that true? Did blood ties obligate connection regardless of behavior? I wasn't sure anymore. Rather than dwelling on unanswerable questions, I changed into jeans and a sweater and ventured out into my hometown for the first time in nearly 2 years. I drove past our old house, smaller than I remembered, with new siding and a red door replacing our old blue one. The elementary school where Allison and I had played tag at recess. The public library where I'd spent countless hours escaping into books when home became too tense. I stopped for lunch at Clara's Cafe, a local institution that had somehow survived the influx of chain restaurants. The owner, Clara's granddaughter Katie, recognized me immediately. Samantha Mitchell. I haven't seen you in ages. She enveloped me in a warm hug that felt more genuine than any interaction I'd had with my actual family recently. How long are you in town? Just the weekend, I replied, settling into a booth by the window. It's good to see some things haven't changed. Katie laughed. We're stubbornly resistant to progress. Dad still won't accept online orders despite my best efforts. We chatted easily as she brought my coffee and took my order. When I mentioned attending Allison's engagement party, her expression grew careful. I heard about that. Quite the event, apparently. You could say that. She hesitated, then asked, how's Allison doing these days? We've sort of lost touch. She's reinventing herself, I said diplomatically. Katie nodded understandingly. Aren't we all? Though some more dramatically than others. She squeezed my shoulder. For what it's worth, I always thought you were the brave one, leaving, building your own life. That takes courage. Her words stayed with me throughout the afternoon as I wandered familiar streets that now felt both intimate and foreign. Was it courage that had driven me away, or self-preservation? Perhaps they were two sides of the same coin. By evening, my phone had fallen mercifully silent. I assumed Allison had finally accepted that I wouldn't respond to her barrage of messages. I settled into bed early with a book, planning a quiet Sunday before driving home. That plan evaporated when I entered the hotel lobby the next morning and found Allison herself perched on a lobby sofa, nervously checking her watch. She spotted me immediately, rising to intercept me before I could decide whether to approach or retreat. Sam, she said, her voice softer than I'd heard it in years. Thank you for not running away. I'm not running anywhere, I replied evenly. This is a public lobby. She winced at my tone but pressed on. Can we talk? Please? I've been trying to reach you since Friday night. I considered refusing, but the genuine distress in her eyes gave me pause. 20 minutes, I conceded. The hotel has a garden terrace that should be quiet this early. We sat at a wrought iron table surrounded by potted topiaries, morning sunlight casting dappled shadows across the stone pavers. Allison looked different in daylight, younger somehow, more vulnerable without her engagement party polish. She wore minimal makeup and a simple sundress that reminded me of the girl she'd been before. I'm sorry, she began without preamble. What I said was cruel and untrue. You are family, always have been, always will be. I studied her face, searching for sincerity. Why did you say it, then? She looked down at her hands. Because I was scared. James's parents have these expectations about family background and connections. My whole relationship with them has been carefully managed. Managed how? They don't know about the times I couldn't pay rent, or the job I lost for calling in sick too often. She twisted a ring on her finger, not her engagement diamond, but a simple silver band I recognized as Mom's. They don't know I maxed out credit cards or that you paid them off. They think I'm this put-together, responsible person with a charming family story about overcoming a father's abandonment. And the truth would ruin that narrative, I supplied. Yes. At least she had the grace to look ashamed. When they started asking questions about you, your career, why we weren't closer, I panicked. It was easier to minimize your role than explain the complicated truth. Which is? That I resented you for years, she admitted quietly. For being stronger, for leaving, for succeeding when I kept failing. For sending money that reminded me how much I depended on my big sister's charity. Her honesty, however belated, deserved acknowledgement. I never saw it as charity, Allison. You're my sister. I know that, intellectually, at least. She wiped away a tear. But it felt like judgment every time you helped. Like a scorecard where you kept winning and I kept losing. For the first time, I saw our relationship from her perspective, how my financial support, meant as love, might have felt like an ongoing reminder of her own struggles. The realization didn't excuse her behavior but helped explain it. When William Peterson recognized your black card and started asking questions, everything I'd carefully constructed seemed about to collapse, she continued. Then I saw an opportunity to rewrite the script again, to claim your success as something I'd supported all along. That's manipulative, Allison. I know. She nodded, tears flowing freely now. I've spent so long trying to become someone the Petersons would accept that I've lost track of who I actually am. Or who we were to each other. We sat in silence for several minutes, the distance between us both vast and microscopic. Finally, I asked the question that had been hovering beneath our conversation. Do you love him? James? Her answer came without hesitation. Yes. Genuinely. He's kind and patient and sees something in me worth believing in. Then build your marriage on truth, not carefully managed impressions, I advised. The Petersons seem like people who value authenticity. They might surprise you. Maybe, she acknowledged, though doubt lingered in her expression. Where does this leave us? It was the question I'd been asking myself since Friday night. I don't know, I answered honestly. We can't go back to who we were as children. Too much has happened. But we could move forward, she suggested cautiously. Maybe get to know each other as the adults we've become. Maybe, I conceded. But it would require honesty, Allison. Real honesty, not convenient versions of the truth. I want that, she insisted. I'm tired of managing impressions and keeping track of which version of myself I'm supposed to be with different people. I wasn't entirely convinced, but her vulnerability seemed genuine. It would take time. And effort from both of us. I know. She reached across the table, not quite touching my hand but leaving hers within reach. I'm willing to try if you are. As I considered her offer, my phone buzzed with an incoming email. William Peterson, following up on James's visit. The subject line read, Foundation Board position, no strings attached. Allison noticed my attention shift. What is it? Your future father-in-law, I explained. He's offered me a position on the family foundation board. Her eyes widened. Are you going to accept? It was the perfect opening to test her sincerity. I'm considering it. How would you feel about that? She hesitated only briefly before answering. Honestly? Part of me is still jealous that you impress people without even trying. But a bigger part would be proud to work alongside my successful sister on something meaningful. Her answer, with its acknowledgement of complicated feelings rather than simple platitudes, felt like the first truly honest exchange we'd had in years. I haven't decided yet, I told her. But I appreciate your honesty. We parted with a tentative hug, awkward but genuine, and a promise to speak again the following weekend. As I watched her walk toward her car, I realized we'd taken the first small step toward a relationship based on who we actually were rather than who we wished to be or feared becoming. The black card that had inadvertently catalyzed this shift remained in my wallet, just a corporate tool, not a measure of worth. But sometimes, I reflected as I headed back inside, it takes an unexpected mirror to show us truths we've been avoiding about ourselves and those we call family. 3 months after the engagement party, I found myself back in my hometown, this time for a scheduled meeting of the Peterson Family Foundation Board. I'd ultimately accepted William's offer, with clear boundaries. My participation would be based on my professional expertise, not my connection to Allison. He'd respected this distinction, and our working relationship had developed into something approaching mentorship. The foundation offices occupied the top floor of the Peterson Development Building downtown. As I parked in my designated spot, still a novelty that made me smile, I spotted Allison's car nearby. We'd agreed to meet for coffee after my meeting, another step in our careful reconstruction of sisterhood. These past months had brought gradual but significant changes. Our weekly phone calls had evolved from stilted exchanges to genuine conversations. I'd visited twice for dinner with her and James, and she'd spent a weekend at my condo in the city. Each interaction felt like archaeology, carefully dusting away years of resentment and misunderstanding to uncover the foundation of connection that remained beneath. Ms. Mitchell, good morning, William's assistant greeted me as I entered the reception area. They're waiting for you in the conference room. The meeting proceeded efficiently, budget approvals for educational grants, planning for the annual fundraising gala, updates on ongoing community projects. I presented my proposal for expanding technology education in underserved schools, a project that combined my professional expertise with personal passion. Excellent work, Samantha, William commented as we wrapped up. Your approach to resource allocation is exactly what we needed. As others filed out, he gestured for me to stay behind. A moment, if you don't mind. Once we were alone, his professional demeanor softened slightly. I wanted to check in about the wedding next month. James mentioned you'll be attending. Yes, I confirmed. Allison and I have been working on things. He nodded thoughtfully. I've noticed. It's good to see. Family connections should be nurtured even when they're difficult. A shadow crossed his face briefly. My own brother and I didn't speak for 12 years over a business disagreement. Wasted time we can never recover. This personal revelation surprised me. William rarely spoke about himself beyond surface pleasantries. What changed? His heart attack 3 years ago, he admitted. Nothing clarifies priorities like mortality. By then, neither of us could remember exactly what we'd been fighting about, only that pride had kept us from reconciling. I'm sorry, I said sincerely. That must have been difficult. It was a valuable lesson, if a painful one. He gathered his papers, signaling our conversation was ending. I'm glad you and Allison found your way back to each other sooner rather than later. As I left the building, his words stayed with me. Found your way back to each other. Was that what we were doing, finding our way back? Or perhaps finding our way forward to something new? Allison was already waiting at the cafe when I arrived, 2 steaming mugs on the table before her. Caramel latte with an extra shot, she announced, pushing one toward me. You still take it that way, right? I do, I confirmed, touched that she remembered. Thanks. How was the meeting? She asked, settling back in her chair. Productive. My education initiative got approved. The tech program for public schools? That's fantastic, Sam. Her enthusiasm seemed genuine. James mentioned you've been working on that proposal for weeks. It matters to me, I explained. Kids like we were, who don't have resources at home, should still have opportunities to develop technological skills. Allison nodded thoughtfully. You've always been like that, seeing problems and actually doing something about them instead of just complaining. Speaking of doing things, I transitioned. How are the wedding plans coming along? She groaned dramatically, but with humor rather than actual distress. Margaret has opinions about everything from napkin colors to whether releasing doves is tacky or traditional. But honestly, James has been amazing about keeping her in check when needed. He seems good at navigating family dynamics, I observed. He is. She hesitated, then added, he's also the one who convinced me to reach out to you that Sunday morning after the engagement party. I was still defensive, making excuses, but he said, if you want a real relationship with your sister, you need to start with a real apology. This revelation surprised me. I didn't know that. He cares about family, actual family, not just the appearance of it. She smiled softly. It's one of the things I love most about him. Our conversation continued, touching on her job at the boutique, which she'd grown to appreciate more after setting better boundaries, Mom's adjustment to her new condo, positive, though she still called Allison first with minor emergencies, and my upcoming work trip to London. As we were finishing our coffees, Allison reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. I wanted to give you this in person. Inside was a handwritten letter, 3 pages of Allison's distinctive looping script. I looked at her questioningly. It's everything I couldn't find the right words to say in conversation, she explained. About Dad leaving, and how I blamed you for leaving too, even though it wasn't fair. About the jealousy and the hurt and the pride that kept me from appreciating what you were trying to do for us. Emotion tightened my throat. Allison. You don't have to read it now, she rushed to clarify. Actually, I'd prefer if you didn't. It's embarrassingly honest in parts. But I wanted you to have it. To know that I'm trying to understand my part in what happened between us. I carefully tucked the letter back into its envelope. Thank you. This means a lot. There's something else, she continued, nervousness creeping into her voice. I know we've been rebuilding our relationship slowly, and I completely understand if this is too much too soon, but... She took a deep breath. Would you consider being my maid of honor? The question caught me completely off guard. What about your friend Melissa? I thought she was planning your bachelorette party already. She is, and she'll still be a bridesmaid. But the more I've thought about it, the more I've realized it should be you beside me. Allison's eyes held mine steadily. Not because of appearances or expectations, but because you're my sister. The person who taught me to ride a bike and braid my hair and navigate the world when everything fell apart. Tears pricked at my eyes unexpectedly. Are you sure? It's only been 3 months since we weren't even speaking. I'm sure, she confirmed. But only if you want to. I understand if it's too much. I considered her offer carefully. Being maid of honor would mean greater visibility, more involvement, potential complications. But it would also acknowledge the journey we'd begun, not erasing the past, but building something new upon its foundation. I'd be honored, I said finally. Truly. Her face lit up with genuine joy. Really? You'll do it? On one condition, I added, holding up a finger. No embarrassing childhood stories in your speech. Absolutely not, she agreed with mock seriousness. I would never mention the time you got stuck in the treehouse and Dad had to call the fire department. We both froze at the casual mention of our father, a topic we'd carefully avoided in our recent conversations. Then, surprisingly, we both burst into laughter. God, I haven't thought about that in years, I admitted, wiping tears of mirth from my eyes. Poor Dad was so embarrassed explaining to those firefighters that his 12-year-old was afraid to climb down. Mom took pictures, Allison recalled, still giggling. I wonder if she still has them somewhere. Just like that, we'd crossed another boundary, the ability to reference our father without the mention immediately souring our interaction. It was a small step but a significant one. As we prepared to leave, Allison hesitated. There's one more thing I wanted to say. What's that? Thank you for not giving up on me, she said softly. Even when I gave you every reason to. The simplicity and sincerity of her words touched something deep within me. That's what family does, I replied, echoing her words from months ago but imbuing them with new meaning. The real kind, anyway. On the drive home that evening, I reflected on the strange, winding path that had led us here. A black card, a simple piece of metal meant for corporate expenses, had inadvertently exposed truths we'd both been avoiding for years. The painful confrontation that followed had cleared away pretense, creating space for something more authentic to grow. Our relationship would never be simple or perfect. We carried too much history, too many complicated emotions for that. But perhaps that complexity was what made it valuable, the hard-won understanding that came from seeing each other clearly, flaws and all, and choosing connection anyway. The letter Allison had given me sat on the passenger seat. I would read it later, in the privacy of my own home where I could process whatever truths it contained. For now, it was enough to know she'd written it, that she was willing to examine her part in our estrangement with the same honesty I'd been forced to confront in myself. As I merged onto the highway toward home, my phone rang through the car speaker system. The dashboard displayed Mom calling, another relationship slowly being rebuilt with new boundaries and expectations. Hi, Mom, I answered, realizing I was genuinely pleased to hear from her. Samantha, she greeted me warmly. I just talked to Allison. She told me the good news about you being her maid of honor. I'm so happy you girls are close again. We're working on it, I clarified, unwilling to oversimplify our progress. It's a journey. The best things usually are, she replied, surprising me with her insight. Listen, I was wondering if you might visit this weekend? There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about. I'd like that, I said, and meant it. As the conversation continued, I realized that the engagement party confrontation had catalyzed changes beyond just my relationship with Allison. That painful evening had forced us all to recognize the consequences of years of unaddressed tensions and unspoken truths. The black card moment hadn't created our problems, it had merely brought them to the surface where they could finally be seen, acknowledged, and eventually, healed. Family, I was learning, wasn't defined by unwavering closeness or perfect understanding. It was defined by the willingness to see each other truthfully and choose connection anyway, not once, but again and again, through disappointment and joy, misunderstanding and reconciliation. Not because shared DNA demanded it, but because the shared history, however complicated, created a unique bond worth preserving. As I drove toward home with the setting sun painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I felt a sense of peace that had eluded me for years. The black card that had inadvertently exposed our family's fractures had also, unexpectedly, become the catalyst for our healing. It wasn't the card's monetary value or status symbol that mattered in the end. It was the conversations it had forced us to have, the truths it had compelled us to face. Money couldn't buy family bonds, but it could certainly reveal their strength or weakness. In our case, it had done both, exposing the fragility of relationships built on convenience while simultaneously highlighting the resilience of connections rooted in genuine care. I still had my sister's letter to read, my mother's conversation to have, a maid of honor speech to write. The work of rebuilding wasn't finished, perhaps it never would be. But for the first time in years, I felt hopeful about our shared future, whatever shape it might take. family, after all, wasn't something you had or didn't have. It was something you created, nurtured, and sometimes fought for, a choice made daily, with open eyes and honest hearts. Have you ever experienced a moment when a misunderstanding with family suddenly became clear? Or when something unexpected revealed truths you'd been avoiding? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this resonated with you, and share with someone who might need a reminder that healing family relationships is possible, even after painful rejection. Thank you for joining me for this deeply personal story. Remember, sometimes it's the unexpected moments that lead to our greatest growth. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.